What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Your Daddy Issues Gaming. Now, I know I've been away for a few weeks, but I've just been off having an adventure in life. But I'm back and I'm super excited to be back with you guys to share this moment in my life with you. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So I want to set the scene. It's 1996. The Nintendo 64 just came out, and guess who has money saved up to buy one? Yep, that's right. This guy right here. Man, let me tell you, I was so excited when this system was released. I just could not get over the fact that we were getting another Nintendo system. So, admittedly, I must say yes. Back in the day, I was a Nintendo fanboy. When I would be pitted, who's better, Sega or Nintendo? I chose Nintendo all the time. Now, yes, the Sony PlayStation was released before the Nintendo 64, but I just was not a CD-based gamer fan. I just really wasn't. And I think the reason why is because I actually owned a Sega Saturn. And there were just no good games. There weren't any. There were two good games on that system that I liked. And one of them was named Astral, and the other one was X-Men Children of the Atom. I was a huge fan of fighting games. So I dropped a lot of quarters into X-Men and Children of the Atom in the arcade. So when it came home, that was primarily the reason why I wanted a Saturn, and I got a Saturn. But every other game just did not do it for me. I had a friend that had a Sony PlayStation, and I wasn't impressed. I just wasn't impressed. And so I think I had formed this bias against CD-based games early on, just based off my own experience with the Sega Saturn. And so, for me, it was cartridges all the way, So when the Nintendo 64 came out, oh man, I got Super Mario 64 because I believe that was a pack-in game. And this game, Turok. Now, why Turok? Okay, so I was a huge comic book fan growing up, and I remember Turok from the comic books. I never owned any of the Turok comic books, but I remember Turok from the comic books. So when I saw that this property had a video game system, it definitely intrigued me. And prior to this, I had never really experienced a first-person shooter game. I didn't play Doom back in the day. I didn't play Castle Wolfenstein. I didn't play any of those games. So this was my foray into first-person shooters. And what made this so very interesting was, of course, the Nintendo 64 controller. Man, let me tell you, that controller was such a departure from the SNES controller. Now, I was watching a YouTuber the other day, John Riggs, I believe, and he was talking about the Super Nintendo, and he was talking about how intimidating that new Super Nintendo controller was to him. And oh my gosh, I related to that because, again, we're coming from the regular Nintendo 2-button controller to now the Super Nintendo with its 6 buttons. Like, what do these extra buttons do? This is all getting all so confusing. And then here we are with the Nintendo 64 with more buttons and this crazy layout. I mean, you have a analog controller, you have a D-pad, you have shoulder buttons, you have a trigger, you have these C buttons that are supposed to be like camera buttons. This is the precursor to the right analog control stick, So the way the Turok game was set up with that control scheme, it was perfect. Now, in hindsight, as I'm replaying this game, the controls are terrible. They really are. But for 96, it was revolutionary. So it was brand new. So they were adequate, And I've never played a game with analog control. That took a lot of getting used to. The way you held the controller, because you held it in the middle, the Nintendo 64 controller. And by the way, I'm actually playing this with one of my actual Nintendo 64 controllers that I have plugged into a USB adapter into my computer, so I can get that really authentic feel. Because if you try to set it up with an Xbox controller, it's not going to work. Anyway, so the way the controller is set up is just wow. You held it in the middle and it felt like a weapon. And you're controlling yourself. You're moving with that analog stick, and you're using the C buttons to move forward, and then the analog stick to look around. Yeah, it's very intimidating when you first get out the box, but then you become you become used to it. But it's still very, it can be very off-putting. So for that, I really appreciated that. I appreciate what Nintendo was doing with that and getting us to step outside of our comfort zone and really explore these different opportunities for controlling games. I did have another experience with analog control in Nights into Dreams. I didn't buy that game on the Saturn. I remember renting it, and I don't know how I got the controller, but there was an actual analog controller. There's like this big round controller for the Sega Saturn. And that was my first experience with analog control, and I remember thinking how precise it was. It was much more precise than dealing with a D-pad. But yeah, the Nintendo 64 as a console, it will always have a very special place in my heart. Oh my gosh, man, so many great games came out for this system. I will never forget the summer of '97. I was living in Baltimore with my brother, who was in college at the time. And me and his roommate, we would have tourneys in Killer Instinct. If anyone remembers Killer Instinct on Nintendo 64, it was such a good fighter. We would have tourneys on it. And then I got Star Fox 64, and it had the Rumble Pack. You had to plug in a Rumble Pack because controllers didn't come automatically equipped with Rumble kits. It was an add-on. You had to add it. And it was so good. It was so fun. And I just spent that entire summer 100%ing Super Mario 64, having these tourneys of Killer Instinct with my brother and his roommate, and doing both paths on Super Mario 64. Now, the Nintendo 64, while I love this system, I did end up falling out of love with it probably around about 98, 99-ish, as the Sega Dreamcast started to creep into existence. And the Sega Dreamcast, if you look at my previous video, I picked that up on day one as well. So I guess my bias towards CD-based systems kind of ended with the Dreamcast, because again, the Dreamcast was a phenomenal system. But I was just falling out of love with the Nintendo 64 because I felt like, well, I'm a few years older, so it's time for my gaming preferences to grow up as well. And I started to view the 64 as a kiddie system, and that's one thing Nintendo has always had an issue with, was being viewed as a kiddie system. But here we are once again. Thank you guys for just sticking around for this story. My Nintendo 64 1996 story. I really enjoyed sharing it with you guys, and I look forward to the next video as well. And I promise I won't be away for so long. Thank you guys again. Please subscribe. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button below. And yeah, we'll get together next time. Peace.